Welcome back to the channel, and we're on to book 11. Before I get into that, though, again, I just want to do the same shout out. If you like the videos, if you enjoy them, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications so you know when new videos come up and future book giveaways. So here's book 11 for the year, Janet Frame's An Autobiography. Hopefully you can see the whole title on that. This was actually written in 3 parts. I've got the omnibus version, but there was 3 volumes. One was To the Island. Volume 2 was An Angel at My Table, and then Volume 3 was in The Envoy from Mirror City. So I'm going to try to cover all 3 parts, really all 3 volumes here in the one video instead of tackling them all separate, because I think I can do that and kind of keep the time still sort of short as well. With part 1, To the Island, is a lot like, if you did read Owls Do Cry, the part 1, volume 1 reads a lot like that, because Owls Do Cry really is sort of a semi-autobiographical account of her childhood, and that's really what part 1 or volume 1 is. To the Island is more about, her childhood growing up, friends that she had, friends she didn't have, the uncomfortableness that she felt, and the things that she liked, things that she didn't like. Little things to come in that would come up in Owls Do Cry. The traveling salesman who then mother puts the foot. The mother closes the door and says, "We already bought something," and they put the foot in the door, and so they're like, "I'm not here to sell you something. I'm here with news, and it's not great news, but it's." So those kind of pieces are there. Excuse me. And I'm a little congested. I'm sorry about that. But it reads a lot, kind of like Owls Do Cry, but in more depth, I guess, and less as a story. Though you can kind of take autobiographies and turn them into stories and visualizations and stuff like that, which is kind of what I did. So To the Island is really more like her parents meeting, her siblings, and then her coming along and just kind of how her childhood was in school, going into college, even, and she tried to teach, and that didn't really work out. And she didn't know what was going on. Something wasn't really quite right with her. So she went into she had tried to commit suicide with aspirin. And she had told or written into a paper to a professor about this. And the professor basically referred her to another person. And that person then convinced her to take a stay in a psychiatric hospital. Now, in I would say we're probably looking at the 1940s, 1950s here. Not very good mental health care, especially probably in New Zealand. And that's one of the things that Janet tried to point out, was that New Zealand was really, really behind in the healthcare field. But basically, without really talking to any doctors, without getting any kind of screen or evaluation or anything else being done, she was diagnosed as being a schizophrenic. And in the autobiography, it's kind of funny because they can't even pronounce the word. It's like schizophrenia, and that's kind of how she spells it at first. And then they look it up in an encyclopedia, and they see really what it is, and they're like, "Oh no, this is kind of serious." Her brother, also, if you remember from Owls Do Cry, the epilepsy. Well, her brother here also had epilepsy. So another kind of another connection between the two. So anyway, from there, she spends 13 years in and out of mental facilities, getting. I can't remember how many she had, and I don't even think she even remembers. But basically, she had so many electroshock treatments done, and they were all equivalent to being in an electric chair, is how she basically talks about it. And I mean, usually they kind of at least hold you down, or strap you down so your muscles don't twitch and you don't go all over the place. Well, they didn't do that. They just basically did it on the table, and I mean, you flopped around on the table. So she's basically now living with this diagnosis. She moves away. She's still in New Zealand, but she comes to live with a fellow writer named Frank Sargeson. And this is probably one of the best things to happen to her, because he gives her a little cabin out in the back and says, here, write when you want to write, do what you want to do. Basically, we can, have our meals together, and and that's really about it. And they end up sharing mutual friends toward the end of their relationship. But while she's there, I mean, she has really no pressure. She's not. It's probably maybe the most peaceful time that she spent in the first half, probably, of the autobiography. And that's where Owls Do Cry comes out. Was written at Frank Sargeson's house, and it talks about them bundling it up and putting it in the wad of paper and mailing it out, and then waiting to see, and then it gets published. And now in New Zealand, it's like, okay, this is a cool thing. And as we find out when she goes to England, that people, she hasn't been published outside of New Zealand yet at this point, but she makes friends with writers and artists, and they all say, have you had anything published? And she's like, well, I was published in New Zealand, but that's it. They all still think it's really cool, that hey, you still got published, and eventually it's probably going to come out in other places. So that's kind of leading up to that point. So then we follow her writing career. She does spend some time in England doing odd jobs, basically waitressing a lot, still going in and out of mental institutions, finding some interesting characters that become characters for some of her other stories that we've that I've done some reviews and chats for here up to this point. She spent some time in Ibiza, or Ibiza, I guess. If I have that pronunciation wrong, please correct me. I don't want to, but I hope I have it right. Anyway, she meets a guy there that she kind of falls in love with. He's American. The maids who she is friends with, kind of funny. They don't like him, and they think she's wrong in going off with him. And long story short, there she gets pregnant, has an abortion, not abortion. I'm sorry, a miscarriage, and returns back to England. When she comes back to England, she starts to question the diagnosis, and she starts to wonder, okay, do I really have schizophrenia? So she checks herself into one of the top hospitals in England and says, I want my case reevaluated. I want you to go over my case and find out what it is that I have. So they reevaluate her case. They do kind of like the intake, the evaluation, or the screen, however you want to word it. And they look over all of her records from New Zealand. They look over everything, and they say, you don't have schizophrenia. You're fine. You're completely, I guess, normal, whatever normal is. Which is, in a sense, to her, it's like a relief, but it's also a burden, because now when she does feel like she needs to hide from something, she doesn't have the schizophrenia to hide behind anymore. It's, now it's her and the shyness and just not feeling like she just doesn't fit anywhere. And that's the kind of the main theme of the autobiography. That's the main theme, really, of her life and many of her characters, is that she just doesn't fit anywhere. Like a misfit, I guess. But I wish, that this would have gone on a little bit further than it did. I mean, I wish she probably would have written a part 4. Because the way it kind of ends is that when she does go back to New Zealand, she gets the house that her parents lived in, and it kind of stops there. And she never wrote a volume 4. I don't know if she ever meant to and just didn't, or if she just figured that it ends right here. But she definitely wrote more books after the autobiography was done. And she obviously did other things before, after the autobiography ends. So I would say this was a 5 stars on Goodreads. If you want to really, I guess, get the visual of her life and what she did, what she went through, Jane Campion's movie, An Angel at My Table, which was a New Zealand miniseries, a miniseries for TV and for New Zealand. But you can find it. It did get released, at least on VHS. I don't know if it ever got released on DVD. But it's about 3, maybe 4 hours long or so. And it basically puts all 3 volumes of the autobiography together into the one movie. So if you really want to get the visual of just what the mental institution was like and seeing the electroshock therapy for yourself and just how brutal it was, I would recommend watching that movie. It's definitely a good movie as well. But 5 stars on Goodreads. I liked it. I just wish you would have written a 4th volume to kind of make it a little more current, more update. But with that, I would say, again, if you enjoyed these videos, please like, subscribe, press the notification button. That way you know when new videos are coming up, future book giveaways. Also, leave your comments down below what you think of these books or what you think I should be reading. And, even your Goodreads name. Just that way we can kind of connect and, you can see what I'm reading, I can see what you're reading, and, it's kind of cool. So, again, I appreciate you. I appreciate your support. And as always, let's keep YouTube literate. Until next time, bye-bye.